This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Well, you knew it was coming. I mean, Marshall McAllister, president at North Road Investment Council, basically told us it was coming. We suspected it was coming. John, I even found and tracked down the password and signed into my iTrade account for the first time.
You remember the password?
Well, no, I didn't.
Oh,
I had
okay.
to go through the exercise and try this one didn't work and this one, and finally I got back into my iTrade account. All of this because Donald Trump's tariff policies and basically kind of this global trade war had sent everything into a skid. And the sense was that the stock market always bounces back. Sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it takes years. Just ask folks. You know, they're of a vintage, a certain vintage these days. They're in their 90s these days. But folks that will still stop and pick up a dime on the sidewalk because they remember the dirty 30s. They remember the Depression. They remember big crashes. If we're lucky enough to have these folks still with us, some of them may remember 1929 and what that did to the world economy. But even if not that, we look at the trend basically of how the stock market goes, and everybody knows it always bounces back. So when there's been a couple of tough weeks, and in particular a couple of tough days, we're talking to you recording this show on a Thursday. It was Manic Monday, they were calling it. They were calling it market mayhem as Trump's tariff policies and this global trade war sent everything basically into a huge skid. And what did some people do? I mean, I'm sure that some sold off, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to protect themselves from any really, really devastating losses. Some people probably saying goodbye to 5 or 10% of their net worth. But what did some people do? Some people bought. And we talked about that with Marshall McAllister. And then what happened? Like 36 hours later, the president of the United States again reverses some of his tariff policies, hammers China with a big one. And what do the markets do? They bounce back in historic fashion, like a 9.5, or depending on what you're talking about, maybe a 10% rally, a big rally. And who made a ton of dough on this? Well, folks that had the money to invest at the time, folks that maybe or even allegedly had the inside track on it, people that paid attention to President Trump's tweet that today was a great day to buy, and what happened? Everybody won big. Now, as we talk to you, the markets are giving back a little bit of that ground again, maybe 3%, the S&P 500 down, and we recognize that not all of this makes sense in real time because it's always changing, but it sent the world into a tizzy, and people are trying to find sort of common sense or steady understanding of how to navigate all of this. We're going to bring you some of the responses stateside, including what politicians and journalists are saying. I want to play a clip from Fox News that I think is particularly interesting, but we'll look for your take on this as well. This is a continuing or developing story, but I want to hear from real talkers. After Marshall joined us on the show talking about this, and Marshall McAllister, a professional money manager, a professional wealth advisor, didn't come on and talk about how this was the end of the world for everybody. And he also didn't, I don't think, come across like crowing and glowing and acting like it was wonderful. But he did say a couple of striking things. Remember, he said to us, if you're and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, if you're a young saver, depending on where you are in your journey, if you're a young saver, he says you want to be out in the streets celebrating every time the stock market crashes because it's great opportunity. If you're on a fixed income, if you're retired, if your 401k in the States or your retirement savings here in Canada are very relevant to you on a day-to-day basis, you don't love this volatility. So it depends on your circumstance. But today we look at this issue through a very different lens than we did even just 2 days ago. And I think that says a lot about where things are at right now. We'll get to more of your comments. We're going to be checking out the Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power through this episode. And we're also going to take a completely different angle, although maybe everything's related in one way, shape, or form with who I think is the preeminent and most prominent voice of Canadian agriculture. We've been telling you in episodes leading up to this that Shaun Haney was going to be joining us, and we're very much looking forward to that starting in 30 seconds. First, if you are a professional money manager, if you're a wealth advisor, a financial planner, I want to make sure that this CDAA designation is on your radar. Business Career College has been in the business of online financial training since the 1990s, and they've just rolled out this new Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation because Gen Z, millennials, basically the now and the future investors are saying that they're curious about decentralized finance. Cryptocurrency is changing how Canadians invest, and that means that advisors and planners need to know as much as they can about it so their advice is meaningful and informed. This is basically just you future-proofing your own career while you help your clients along the way. You can check out businesscareercollege.com for more on the CDAA designation. They'll cover everything from the foundations of Bitcoin and the blockchain to next-gen crypto. And, of course, strategies for advising your clients. If you use the promo code Ryan20, all one word, Ryan20, it'll knock 20% off the investment in your career. That's the CDAA designation at businesscareercollege.com. Shaun Haney is the founder of RealAgriculture, and he's the host. As if I need to tell some of you, you already know this because you listen every single day, I bet, to RealAg Radio on Rural Radio 147 SiriusXM from coast to coast and, of course, around the world. RealAgriculture's team provides insights on the issues that impact farmers and ranchers across our great nation and beyond. It's a real pleasure to welcome Shaun Haney to the show. And Shaun, you're joining us live from, where is it? You're in the Midwest somewhere right now, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I'm actually in Kansas City, Missouri today for, actually all week for a big convention called NAMA. All the agri-marketers across North America getting together and talking about what marketing campaigns look like the year ahead. So
Wow.
Interesting stuff here.
I'm pretty
Kansas
sure
Kansas City is the most underrated, one of the most underrated U.S. cities. I love it. Great food. It's awesome.
I keep hearing people talk about how Kansas City is super underrated. This actually is not even the first interview of 2025 that we're doing to Kansas City, Missouri. I'm pretty sure that the last time we talked to Saskatchewan-based YouTuber Quick Dick McDick, he was also down in Kansas City for it was a farm equipment expo, some massive expo. Is Kansas City kind of like where the heart beats with American ag?
Yeah, there's a lot of meetings that come to Kansas City. They've done a really good job of keeping the rich history going back to the early 1900s. The Union train station is just unbelievable, out of this world. There's a whole bunch of convention airspace that is set up in the city, so that it is kind of one of the main spots that ag meetings in the U.S. tend to gather around.
Let's talk. I mean, we're talking right now about this. The scathing indictment of what's happening right now with Donald Trump's economic policy is market manipulation. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But we have you here to talk about ag. Obviously, not everything will have to do with Donald Trump, and you and I will spend enough time to make sure we're covering all the issues that are really impacting producers and consumers across the country. But what's the Trump effect looking like on Canadian ag producers, farmers and ranchers right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of concern. What does it mean for, Canada's very export focused. And right now we are seeing, honestly, the most disruption I can remember in my entire lifetime when it comes to what the trade lanes are and what trade period looks like going forward. And of course, with Canada's adjacency to the U.S., It puts Canada in a really precarious situation in this battle, this war, however you want to put it, between the U.S. and China as tariffs continue to escalate. Can Canada maintain somewhat of a positive relationship with the United States, but also develop a market diversification and find new trade partners or improved trade partners around the world? The reality is, though, no matter what you think about the U.S., we are immensely tied to it from an economic standpoint. And I heard in the opening there was somebody talking about how Europe is like Canadians understand Europe is the future. Well, it's important. I think Canada does about like $35 billion worth of trade with Europe. That's all trade. The U.S. is $600 billion. Like, they're not even in the same vicinity, Ryan. So it's critical, whoever the next prime minister is, that they find a better relationship, a smooth relationship with President Trump and this administration.
Yeah, it seems to me like there's conversation happening on both sides of the border right now about like what needs to happen right away. It's like, Canadian exporters need to find new global markets right away. And I'm sitting there going like, I'm imagining that would probably take some time. Meantime, Donald Trump wants, for example, American auto manufacturers to like start manufacturing autos in the United States or clothing companies to bring their business back to American soil right away. away. Obviously, for producers, this isn't the type of thing I would imagine that individuals are advocating for or digging up on their own, is it? Like, how does this all work? What does it mean for somebody that's growing crops outside Estevan, Saskatchewan? What's that person thinking or doing or supposed to do right now?
Well, yeah. What they're thinking about doing is putting the crop in the ground, but they're kind of operating on the faith that the Canadian government is doing market development and setting up the proper relationships abroad. Also, the companies that you are selling to. So individual farm. If you're farming in Weyburn or outside of Edmonton, you're not responsible for the most part to be talking to the Japanese or somebody in China about, hey, do you want to buy my canola? You're relying on the industry and the government to really provide the opportunity for your product to eventually get there at the end of the day. Now, you feel it as you see the cash prices and you see where the futures market's going and what the basis is and things like that. But the farmer very much is a price taker and really hoping, I guess, and hope is not a plan, but that's just the unfortunate situation, hoping that a smoother, calmer environment prevails in the longer run here.
Gizmo's watching us in the live chat, powered by Park Power, says, I disagree with Haney 100%. Canada needs to remove the American power over us. Canada must diversify. I know a lot of people read your column. We are one step closer to Fortress North America at RealAgriculture.com. Take us into this idea of Fortress North America and what it means for Canada.
Yeah, April 2nd, which President Trump called Liberation Day, that's a whole comic routine in itself. But when he applied those tariffs on April 2nd, made the announcement, there was a bit of a signal there. Canada and Mexico, not on the board that he had with him on the front lawn. And also a bit of a day to breathe. And it was the second week in a row where Canada and Mexico appear to be being treated a little bit differently than the rest of the world. Now, we have to keep in mind, softwood lumber tariffs, the auto sector very much still under attack, but being treated a little bit differently than, say, Europe or definitely China. And I think it's a step in the direction of what many are calling Fortress North America, where there is going to be an ask from the U.S. for Canada and Mexico to get on board with this pushback against whether it's Europe or more specifically China. Think back how we got those EV tariffs. Canada put 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. Is that because we're worried about all these Chinese EVs coming into the country? Not really. What we're worried about is trying to be on side with the Americans who made that request in the first place. Because what the accusation is China is moving product through Canada and through Mexico to use the USMCA agreement to get it into the United States. And the U.S., I think, is going to try to set up a bit of a barrier from that aspect around North America. And I think we're seeing this in Carney's comments, and I don't have his quote in front of me, but Carney's already talking about how, hey, President Trump, if elected, President Trump and I we've agreed that we're going to have this security and investment agreement. That's what he's talking about. And so at the end of the day, and that $600 billion in exports that Canada has to the U.S., Canada's going to try to protect it. And how they protect it is being on the same side as the United States in the battle against China.
Yeah, I want to ask. I mean, I don't know that we're spending so much time collectively, and part of this is my fault for sure, and the fault of talk show hosts and journalists. But we're spending so much time talking about the trade relationship with the United States. I think for obvious reasons, geographical proximity, relevance to our economy, and the like, and not a ton of time seeking to understand what trade tensions with China really mean for Canadians. And in this context, talking to you with ag producers, you could probably include India in the mix as well.
Yeah.
What's one thing that maybe the average Canadian, maybe ag producers are aware of this, but what's one real international storyline that you think more people should be following?
Oh man,
I mean, are there 1,000?
There are many. I think one of the things I think right now for Canadians, it feels good and it's timely to have this rejuvenation of pride in our country, and we should have. I think if anything, this has taught us that we should have more pride in our country, and be thinking in Canada's best interests more often. But this has also exposed the fact that, although it's easy to say, and everybody get their elbows up and do their thing, that's fine. But at the end of the day, Canada's economic future and Canada's economic success, because of the integrated supply chains or complementary supply chains, however you want to phrase that, it exists because of our access and our adjacency to the United States. We are the envy of many countries around the world because of our access to that market. And we shouldn't so easily think about it as somehow it's this massive disadvantage, that it's held Canada back, that we're so tied and we're so integrated with the U.S. Countries around the world dream of having that kind of integration. We really do need to figure out how we use that as leverage and to our advantage more so going forward. And I think through all this, Ryan, we've seen the I guess hyperbolic natures of both of our cultures. Okay. Canadians tend to be very relationship focused. Our feelings are hurt. And you know what? There's things that the president has said that are about Canada that, yeah, absolutely, we probably should be upset. We should be mad. But at the end of the day, we maybe have focused too much on that. And the U.S., I've always said that President Trump is the most hyperbolic version of what it's like to do business in the U.S. It's about the transaction. It's about how we're going to make money. It doesn't tend to be the relationship first. And so you think back to February 1st weekend. Prime Minister Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre both give press conferences. And it was like the same person wrote the speech. And what they did is they now I want to talk to our American friends. And then they spoke to Americans in those addresses as if they were Canadian. Canada sometimes talks about we're always talking about, hey, World War II and hey, we were side by side, and all that is true. But it's not necessarily what's actually moving the needle and getting Americans to understand why this relationship is beneficial. It's beneficial because it's economically also good for Americans too. And we need to focus more on that.
We're talking to Shaun Haney, host of RealAg Radio on SiriusXM, the founder of RealAgriculture. We got a ton of people here with a lot to say to you. By the way, Horse Lake Ranch in our live chat, I don't know if the name rings a bell. Horse Lake Ranch says thank you so much for the hat. Says I appreciated it right up until my wife stole it from me. So I think that's a compliment on the design of however your hats look. But we got a bunch, and we'll take a bunch of angles on this, obviously including the federal election. I'm going to ask you LT's question here about the carbon tax. You talked about a lot of producers in Canada right now getting ready to seed. That's probably the first thing on their mind once the snow melts. And interesting comment here, I think it's from Tracy, who says there's so much uncertainty in the ag industry right now. She says we may see more farmers try inputting different products this year. We may see more mixed farming. Are there factors at play that could change how farming is done this season, or is this just cyclical? Shaun, we have you with us? I think we may have lost Shaun Haney. We'll work on getting him back. Johnny, why don't I pay a couple of bills right now? We'll get Shaun Haney back. It's a good time to remind you right now that our friends at Edmonton Opera have just released their 2025-26 season, and this is obviously a big deal for opera lovers everywhere. Edmonton Opera's season 2025-26 is all about legacy, and while some legacies are passed down, others must be claimed. You can check out the full lineup online at edmontonopera.com. That's where you can either build your own season or just sign up to basically see everything that they're presenting through the year, including Bravi, opera's greatest hits. I love this, in partnership with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra, October 9th and 11th. 2 nights and 2 nights only. You're going to want to make sure you don't miss that at the beautiful Winspear Center. In February of 2026, audiences will witness the world premiere of Indians on Vacation, a poignant and comedic new opera based on Thomas King's novel of the same name. That runs early February at the Northern Alberta Jubilee Auditorium, and the season concludes with the 3rd chapter of Wagner's legendary Ring cycle, Siegfried, an epic tale of heroism and fate, will be performed at the McLab Theater at the beautiful Citadel, that at the end of May of 2026. All of this, the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra's 2025-26 season. This is opera at its finest in partnership with the ESO. That Bravi presentation is going to be one kicking off this season you will not want to miss. Again, our friends at Edmonton Opera inviting you to check out the full season at edmontonopera.com. Friesen Brothers is ready to rock and roll. Johnny, I was just telling you, I was chatting with the team at Friesen Brothers just the other day about some catering that we're looking to do. And of course, you know, for Friesen Brothers, this is what they do oh so well. They do everything well, don't they? Whether it's their real sourdough bakers, whether it's the butchers, whether it's the produce that they're sourcing as close to their 16 locations as they possibly can. It's been a while since I've mentioned the bees that they keep on the roof of their Rabbit Hill store in South Edmonton. Friesen Brothers is doing it all, and not just in response to what consumers are looking for these days, but also as a result of how they've always approached what they offer, and that is good food meant to be enjoyed around the table. You can learn more about their experiences, including the Market Garden, the Mother Dough Bread Company, the deli where they make those custom sourdough sandwiches. Those things blow my mind every time I stop in. And of course, you can check out all of their offerings with catering by Friesen Brothers on their website as well. That's friesen.com, Freson.com. That's where you'll find Friesen Brothers. And before we get back to Shaun Haney, I want to remind those of you that are getting set to improve where you're living right now, and by that I'm talking about getting organized, getting decluttered. Check out CaliforniaClosets.ca today. The website's super user-friendly, so you can scroll through and check out some of the installations that they've done, custom closets, systems, and solutions for the entire home. This is the time of year everybody's going to start spending a little more time in the garage. On a positive, maybe hanging out there having a beer after a game of golf, and on the not so positive, spending 45 minutes looking for your garden hose or the bike tire pump or whatever it is that's all mired and buried in the clutter. We've all been there. We get it. The garage is the workhorse of the home, so why not make it work a little harder for you? See what the team at California Closets can do. Request a free consultation today on their website. And remember, when you do so, you're supporting a Canadian-owned and Canadian-operating company. All of their installations, garages, and everywhere else manufactured right here in Alberta. That's CaliforniaClosets.ca. I think we got Haney back here live from Kansas City, Missouri. Can you hear me loud and clear, pal?
I absolutely can. Something I said, I just got like you just cut me off.
I don't know what
you threw me out of the room.
It's kind of what we do here is if we hear something we don't like, fuck it, we pull the plug and the interview's done. So
she's over.
Sorry, not sorry. I don't know if you heard the question, but no. Tracy's hanging out with us on YouTube, and to paraphrase, she basically says there's a lot of factors at play right now. She says there's a lot of uncertainty in ag, and it may be influencing some different inputs that farmers choose to go with this year. She says we may see a lot of mixed farming this season. Is that a thing as far as you can see it as well?
I think you're going to see a lot of cost cutting. And so, through some of our market research we've been doing at RealAgriculture, one of the things that we have seen is, we know that profitability is very tight here in 2025. It's great in things like the beef sector, for example, but if you think about the cropping sector, it's pretty brutal. So if we are going to see more mixed farming, it's because people are trying to get into the beef industry because of where the margins are, especially in the cow-calf sector. But we're seeing farmers out there that are going to be planting wheat and canola and peas all around Western Canada. They're cutting back on costs, looking at, how much fertilizer do I actually have to use? Can I go with maybe some cheaper crop protection products? No different than anybody else running a business. You're just trying to find some decent ways or smart ways to try to find some cost cutting. So maybe you're giving yourself a better chance for profitability if the markets do go higher.
The other big story right now, obviously, we've talked about Donald Trump, the federal election. 15 minutes into the interview, we'll touch on the federal election right now. Ag, probably not the top issue right now, but it factors into absolutely everything, if for no other reason that Canadians eat. And, of course, we would be nothing without our ag sector. Are you satisfied with the level of attention that the ag sector is getting through these campaigns, or do you find it deplorable?
Well, it's not deplorable. That's not how I would describe this election. This is shocking. It was kind of what's happening, or it is one of the most fascinating federal elections that we have had in a very long time. And it moved from where it could have been the most boring of elections. It was essentially going to be, a crowning if we were to do this about 6 months ago versus where we are here today. I think agriculture in some kind of way feels like it's more in this election because it has been a little bit more about foreign affairs and about trade, specifically, what needs to be the strategy or who is the best person to handle this relationship between Canada and the United States. That's very much an ag issue because of the importance of that market to Canadian farmers and ranchers. So I think that's a little bit different this year. But ag issues specifically are, we've been hearing a little bit about supply management, and that's always a thing. And all the parties basically say, yeah, we're, never going to give it up, and they move on. But for the most part, ag issues aren't top of mind in a federal election campaign.
Yttrium says nothing in ag is a quick pivot. Alberta Girl says, remember, everybody, planting decisions have been made. Seed and fertilizer has been bought and paid for. Ag can't pivot in a matter of weeks and then suddenly change the planting plan. And regarding livestock production, of course, it takes years to increase herds. We're hearing from people who live this, and we're grateful for our ag producers in the audience. Obviously, a political angle that would be relevant to any producer would be the industrial or the carbon tax, of course. And there's been movement on that, probably in a positive direction for people who have been looking to see the axe drop on that carbon tax. It was Pierre Poilievre's idea. Mark Carney has stolen it, and everybody benefits, I guess, except for those that hope to see carbon pricing in place to, help the environment. But I digress. It's been a huge cost, a significant cost for ag producers. Where do you see that going? LT is in our live chat, wanting me to get your comment on how it impacts ag producers and ultimately consumers if those costs are passed down.
Yeah, so from a farm on the farm perspective, it's a good thing. The way that the idea of the carbon tax was to steer people to other options. Well, in many of the cases, you can only power your grain dryer by using some of the natural gas that has a carbon tax on it. And so you're basically incurring that cost, and farmers obviously feeling that on their bottom line. You're gonna see support across the country from the farming community in terms of getting rid of the carbon tax. Even farmers I hear from in our audience that are the most environmentally conscious, admitting this is kind of a dumb policy the way that we are applying this, and nobody understands the black box math that comes with the fact that people get a check at the end of the day and it's more than they actually spent. It doesn't make any sense for so many people. So goodbye. The whole comment about the industrial carbon tax, that's one that I sometimes feels a little bit over my head and is a little bit more confusing. And I think the Conservatives were so tied to axe the tax that I'm not sure they did maybe went the full extreme to really think about that policy. There's a lot of there's industries that believe that actually was sound policy and just shouldn't be thrown out the window. We'll have to see what happens.
I know that growing up with family in Derry, this was always as a city slicker, as a city kid, this was always a question that you sort of get a gleam in your eye and you could kickstart a big debate, especially if you had two, maybe you had a beef rancher in the room and a dairy farmer in the room, and you could just say so what do you guys think about supply management? And I know that it's been something that's probably been more on Canadians' radar because Donald Trump's been obviously presenting it as a real issue, a barrier to trade, and characterizing it in his own way to make points, I think, to the American people, and it puts Canadian politicians and Canadian business owners as well in a position to either defend or decry supply management. The politician that's probably most notably been critical of it hasn't seen any polling traction, and that would be Maxime Bernier with the People's Party of Canada. But could you see movement? I mean, the kind of the Liberal position on this, Mark Carney's been very clear. He says supply management's not going anywhere in Canada. That's just a fact. That's the Liberal position on it. Should it be up for debate, and kind of what's your position on it as a talk radio host?
Yeah, well, Poilievre, the Conservatives have the same position. I think all of the parties except for the People's Party have said that we stand behind supply management. It is kind of interesting with Poilievre's libertarian flair that supply management is something that he is standing up for. It's not changing as a party policy under Pierre, in my opinion. The question is, does that industry trust the Conservatives? There's a bit of a history there of them not trusting the Conservatives on that. but I honestly don't see this one changing from a Trump perspective. And there's this whole debate happening in Canada that Trump wants to take down supply management. Well, that's not what I'm hearing from what he's saying. And to be honest, when I talk to U.S. dairy groups, that's not what they're pushing for either. When I talk to U.S. dairy groups, and this goes back to last fall, them reiterating what they want is Canada to meet, and I don't want to get too wonky here, but they want Canada to meet the U.S. definition of those tariff rate quota allocations. It's not about, I think we're way too distracted by dairy. And quite honestly, the fact is that the auto issue the auto sector issue with the Americans is way bigger than anything that gets talked about when it comes to supply management in this trade negotiation. I actually do not think supply management is on the chopping block when it comes to President Trump.
Do you think that supply management is a good thing for Canadian consumers? People only have so much bandwidth to focus on and to learn about and read about. And I think it's like the average Canadian probably doesn't 100% understand how it works or why it's there or the industries it's seeking to protect or serve, and poultry and dairy and the like. But in your estimation, your personal opinion, do you think it's policy worth protecting?
I can see the benefits, and I can also see, and I don't want to be wishy-washy here, but I can see why people want to take it down because they think that it's going to lead to cheaper prices. That's what I'm not convinced of that. Like, there is lots of products in Canada that we full stop pay more for than the Americans do, like tires and like things like that. So I'm not convinced of that angle. I do understand in farming communities in Ontario and Quebec why it's there to try to hold on to the smaller producer. It also benefited us during the avian influenza. You look at the size of the U.S. poultry industry. One of the issues has when it comes to some of the the killing of birds. Part of that is the fact that some of those barns are so large. And that's created a whole bunch of euthanization because of the size of those operations. Because of the smallness of the U.S. operation or the Canadian operations, it's kind of kept it a little bit more in check from that perspective. So honestly, I've got audience members on both sides of this. Sometimes I get labeled in both directions. You hate supply management, you love supply management. It is a very contentious issue that I honestly, personally, I think is here to stay. Because here, Brian, here's the fact. You could get rid of it tomorrow. Like, say the policy changed tomorrow, and we're going to get, Canada's going to take down supply management. No more. One of the things that's not talked about is the economic cost to the taxpayer to compensate those producers for the cost of the quota. Yep. And some people are going to be like, oh, wait a minute, Haney. Why do we need to do that? They've been propped up forever. The reality is that we have allowed, and right or wrong, those producers have been able to use that quota value as equity in farm loans. And that, you just can't leave those people. You're going to decimate the industry if you do not compensate people for those quota values.
Yeah, it's like it's like okay, this is the City Slickers explanation, but basically quota a lot, like as I understand it, as my cousins have explained it to me, it's basically it allows you to produce. You're allowed to have like a certain number of liters of milk on the farm or whatever, right? Like that's basically what you're allowed to do. I can't just if I inherit like $30 million or I win the 649, I can't just like go start up a dairy farm and get a bunch of cows and just start producing a bunch of milk and then selling it to, like, that's not how it works, right? So you're talking about the evaporation of, in some operations, millions or tens of millions of dollars worth of value. Is it fair? Like, is it reasonable to compare it to like what happened to people that own taxi licenses when Uber swooped in? Is that kind of the thing where you see hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars worth of assets just disappear?
Yeah, that's actually, there probably is differences, but at the 100,000 foot, yeah. And so, but in this case, there are millions of dollars of loans out based on the value of that equity. And the reality is you may be a crop producer and be like, I don't care, take it down. The reality is, if those dairy farms and poultry operations all of a sudden can't afford the land, what do you think is happening to the land value? And what do you think is happening to your land value? It will impact all farmers across the country.
Jillian's watching us in the live chat powered by Park Power, says, my toddler was refusing milk, actually, when we were down in the States. It was such crap. There's a lot of people here. Gizmo says American food standards are much lower than Canada's, and ours are lower than the EU's. I hear this a lot. People talk about American milk and cheese like it's just not as good. In your estimation, is that true?
Man, I don't know. I know European cheese is really good.
Well, sure.
Taste buds are different. Like, listen, I had a steak last night in Kansas City. Kansas City's known for its steaks. It was really good. Alberta beef is also really good as well. There is, the people with the most sensitive palates can probably taste the real difference between grass-fed and grain-fed. If you were to go down to Brazil or South America, where there is different production methods, honestly, I don't know. It's whatever the locals want.
Okay, I want to ask you about one other challenge before we thank you for your time. I know you got a ton to do in Missouri today, but whether it's implementation of tech on farms, whether it's the impacts of inflation and maybe the rising cost of borrowing that may be affecting producers, where government policy may be more relevant, where it's the way that labor challenges are being managed, temporary foreign workers and the like. What's one story that on behalf of RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio you're going to be following or keeping a really keen eye on over the next number of months?
Well, the outcome of the election, I think that is the very big one. Obviously, the farming community is very much in behind the Conservatives. If you look at some of the electoral maps, no surprise, rural people voting Conservative. Although I will say this, in pockets in the country, I gave a speech a couple weeks ago in southwestern Ontario. There is like a I don't know if a lack of trust of Pierre Poilievre, but not sold on Pierre Poilievre. That like maybe somebody that would be in Milo, Alberta, for example. I think agricultural communities would like to see more of a trade focus, no matter who wins this election. And so if we are going to talk about trade diversification because we're elbows up and we need to detach ourselves or at least be less reliant on the American market, we need to be able to, we need to invest on making that happen. That just doesn't happen because somebody shows up in India and says, hey, have you ever thought about buying Canadian products? Well, where you been all my life? That's not the way it works. Canada needs to invest in things like trade infrastructure. Do we have the infrastructure to allow us and make us a reliable supplier to get it from the middle of the country to the port? And when we get it to port, can we actually, the Port of Vancouver is one of the worst performing ports in the world, according to several different reports. We need to improve in those areas as well. And at the same time, making sure that we have people on the ground in those markets that we think we're going to diversify in. We got to stop this narrative of just sort of like showing up with the maple leaf on our backpack, waving the flag, giving somebody a bottle of maple syrup and expecting that the rest of the world is just going to love us. We have to actually do the hard, grindy work of market development, market access to actually move the needle here. If you are actually serious about being less reliant on the U.S. market, it takes more than talk. It takes action. And Ryan, I had somebody explain to me this: Canada is the land of aspiration, and it is the land of no action. And action is what Canadians need if they actually want different things to happen.
Do you think that's fair? It
is fair.
We're a land of no action?
It is dude, we are great at striking committees. Let's talk about it. Let's build consensus. And then we take so long to do that that took 5 years. We better restart because some variables change. And it's what we heard papers. We are really good at just being constipated on thought.
But you're talking about things like environmental consultation and social license. You're talking about all the things, right?
Regulations.
Well, yeah. So what are you saying? Just get rid of all the regulations?
No, I'm talking about. Think about gene editing. This is a good example.
Okay.
Canada was on the forefront of talking about gene editing, and one of the very last G7 countries to actually approve it. And please, people, don't give me the crap about how, well, that's because our regulatory system is really, really strong and we need to go through these numbers in much better fashions and we just have this higher bar. That's bullshit. We're bureaucratic and we don't move fast enough. You can make good decisions and still move fast. It is possible.
Johnny, we just got our YouTube short. We were waiting for it, Haney. We were going to drag this interview along until we got your magic clip, and we just got it. Canada, constipated. People will be able to find it on our YouTube channel. Subscribers and non-subscribers alike. One quick question before you go. I think it was Alberta Girl in the chat said that there's cattle. The number of cattle in North America is at the lowest right now since the 1970s, and she's talking about how prices are so high. Is that accurate as far as you know? And if so, what are the contributing factors there?
So the supplies are low, and through all this recessionary talk and the concerns about interest rates and affordability the last 2 years in Canada and the U.S., it is shocking how beef demand. You look at proteins, beef, pork, and poultry. Beef is a more expensive protein, and demand has been strong domestically and internationally. Part of the reason the prices are high is because of that supply issue. Supply issue has gone down because of drought. You need two things to expand the cow herd. You need good prices, so you need cash, and you need weather. And the western half of the U.S. has really been in a dry situation. You think about Western Canada, it seems we talk about drought 5 out of 6 years. And the Canadian answer to this, too, is we still have not recovered from the PTSD of BSE. BSE in 2003 still has an impact on the mindset of the rancher, and we're still trying to kind of overcome that and move past. We had a lot of people. Your area, like Edmonton, you think around the Edmonton area, man, everybody used to have like 50 pairs. You'd have a job in the city, you had an acreage, and you had 50 pairs. All of those people are shook out and gone since BSE, and we haven't been able to bring them back, and that's been one of our supply challenges.
I love every single time we get a chance to chat with you, Haney. Nobody's a more passionate commentator on and participant in Canadian agriculture. People can check out RealAgriculture.com for more on what you do. And don't forget, Shaun, of course, also the host of RealAg Radio for SiriusXM subscribers. That's on Rural Radio 147. It was a total pleasure to hop on your show yesterday. Always appreciate it, man. Keep in touch and keep up the great work.
Hey, thanks a lot. Big shout out to everybody in the Real Talk audience. Love listening to the program and watching it on all the platforms, and keep up the great work, Ryan.
Yeah, I should mention Daniel Boyd is one of many. I just wrote down his comment. He says, hey, I really enjoyed this guest. Please thank him for his time. So Daniel speaking on behalf of the audience, Haney. We'll talk later. There he is, Shaun Haney, and a ton of chatter here in our Real Talk live chat. Appreciate this. What particular, I mean, everybody's digging in on a bunch of different stuff. I profess my love to you all every single day and how much I appreciate that when we're talking about, river rescues like yesterday, we got a bunch of people that have experience and or understand firefighting or emergency response. Now we're talking ag, and we got ranchers in the chat, and we got, of course, those of you that are going to be, seeding in the next couple of weeks and giving us your perspective there. And then, of course, I love parents. There's some talk. I think it was Jillian that kind of kickstarted the conversation. Johnny saying that she said that the American milk sucked and her toddler didn't want to touch it. Somebody said, I think it was Jill that went on to said, the president of the U.S., Donald Trump, is bigly mad that no Canadians want their food. She says, I'm going to feed my kids cereal that glows in the dark. Have you noticed in the U.S., have you noticed that this is something, of course, as Canadians, we always want to believe ours is the best. We've talked about this before. I'm a proud consumer and a proud proponent of Alberta beef. I've also had Japanese Wagyu beef that has blown my mind. And Shaun saying he had a steak in Kansas City that he said, was pretty good as well. But we always believe ours is the best. Have you ever been down in the States and felt sorry for American consumers as you've browsed their grocery stores?
No, I think it's just different palates. They've refined and they've evolved differently, and there's just a different spectrum of taste for our neighbors down in the South, and I don't know if that's good or bad. It's good for them when they live there. When they come here, they say the same thing. But we have the same cereal as the States. I don't know what that comment was
cereal
about.
These days. Have you ever? I've actually tried to.
Lucky Charms glows here. It also glows down in the States.
Oh, the Lucky Charms. What's your favorite cereal of all time?
Me, I don't want to call it healthy, but I usually eat. Can we name?
We can say whatever we want.
Yeah,
say whatever we want.
Usually I eat Raisin Bran, just plain Cheerios with some maple syrup on it, or
maple syrup.
Well, I don't want to buy the ones with the sugar on it, like the Honey Nut, so I just buy the regular.
Smart.
And then I eat the Vector one. I know that one.
Vector's really good.
They push it as healthy. It's not super healthy, but I like that too.
Yeah, I'm a big Vector guy.
Yeah.
There's a cereal they used to make, and I love it because it reminds me of my grandparents. Rudy and Doris Dutka, but it's a cereal that was called Crispy Wheats and Raisins, and I don't think they make it anymore.
I have never seen that.
But it was actually like a better, in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and Clark Griswold's talking about this ultimately leads to the platter, like the tobogganing scene where he's on that, the round metal disc that takes him all the way through it at hyperspeed because he's sprayed it with his cooking spray. Yeah. And it's this spray that he believed, like if they spray cereal flakes, they'll be able to stay crisp, stay crunchy longer in the milk. They won't get soggy. Yeah. And I felt like Crispy Wheats and Raisins held up better than Raisin Bran did.
Raisin Bran's hard
in the milk because
you're on a timer.
once Raisin Bran takes on the milk, it's pretty lousy. But Raisin Bran in the first 30 seconds is really good.
Yeah, it's great, and that's another reason. Like mini wheats used to be my forever, and then kind of as I got older, I don't know if it's oats or gluten or what it is, but if I eat a ton of wheat, it's not too good for my skin, so I got out of there. But the main reason before that was mini wheats is just like Raisin Bran. Like you have a set amount of time where the quality of the cereal in the bowl is gonna be edible before it's just a big thing of mush.
I knew that our Real Talk live chatters here would be in on this, and I see Miss Chief Sharon says Shreddies, and she's got a whole bunch of exclamation marks. Like she's very enthusiastically submitting Shreddies as her number one choice. LT says, when I was a kid, I used to eat Count Chocula. I don't know that I've ever tried Count Chocula. That's always been one I've looked at on the shelf, and I've always I've always kind of wished I would have had a better relationship with the sugar cereals. My family,
too sweet.
My parents they were onto something, and now as a parent myself, I understand what they were doing with this. But we called them sugar cereals. They made no bones about it. They were called sugar cereals, and on Sunday mornings we were allowed to have a bowl of sugar cereals, and then for the rest of the week we would have the like Cheerios, kind of the classic.
Regulars.
I wonder if Cheerios is the best-selling cereal in the world.
I don't.
Would you think?
I could check.
There's a lot of. Kenzie says eating cereal is about as healthy as eating cardboard. I hear you 100%. Dwayne is submitting a vote for cream of wheat, also giving a vote to oatmeal. Fair enough. I would high protein oatmeal, says Gizmo. Jillian just says, oh boy, now I'm hungry. Sorry, not sorry. Wobbly Ink says in the winter, Sunny Boy cereal is awesome, says that's a product of Canada. A Sunny Boy, is that an oatmeal? I think it must be. So some of you.
Yeah, shout out to the granolas and stuff like that, because I throw that in too. I just can't eat it every day. It's so heavy, and there's usually dried fruit in it and stuff.
Granola's tough to beat.
Granola is really good, but is that even a cereal? That's almost like a meal, right?
That's a fair. I do feel like granola is a cereal.
Yeah.
Like, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Let's not get into that. But I checked here. It's hard to find out what the global cereal is, because obviously in Asian markets and across the pond, there's a ton of products we don't know about. But in the North America, you are right. Cheerios is still the number one selling cereal.
I'm getting my pronunciation corrected. Sharon letting me know it's Machif. Machif, Sharon, she's going to let me know the next time our paths cross. I appreciate that. I always want to know. I always want to get it right? And so Ms. KD says Shreddies were her favorite as a kid. Says we didn't get sugar cereals except when we were camping, and then we got those mini boxes. The mini boxes were the best. You remember that? Yeah. They'd come in and I think actually, someone showed me this trick once. I think they're actually designed so you can cut through. You flip them
you open them up and eat right out of them when you're camping.
They're like little bowls, and what were in those? They had the Frosted Flakes, Rice Krispies, typically Fruit Loops.
It's like the General Mills pack or whatever.
Fruit Loops is a bit of a sleeper in the cereal chat. I've always been a huge fan of Fruit Loops. Ben Demon Hunter says we only had plain cornflakes. Cornflakes, another classic. Rice Krispies, Cheerios, cream of wheat.
Plain cornflakes. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a practical choice.
Different strokes, different folks, I guess.
Don't you think that's you're not a big fan of the cornflakes?
No, I guess I would liken it to something like, if I was going to eat something like that, I'd probably eat like Special K or something, because it's similar, but I got a little fruit in there or whatever. Yeah. Like the plainest thing I eat would probably be just plain Cheerios. But after that, Raisin Bran. But Raisin Bran, again, you're on a timer. And also, the Raisin Bran is like if I have a tough week with my stomach, I don't want to get too private here. But I'll be like,
talk to us about your tough weeks with your stomach.
No, but you know what I mean? I'll have a bowl of Raisin Bran. Maybe my fiber's down. Maybe I need to, get a little of that in.
Yeah, okay.
But I just recently got back into cereal. The last 4 to 6 months, but it was out of my life for like a year. And then I'm like, wait, what am I doing? This is a nice little snack that isn't, I know it's not healthy, but it's better than like, cooking a whole meal or whatever. You just have a little bowl of cereal.
Yeah.
And I actually, what brought it around was watching Jerry Springer's, that Frosted movie or whatever, when they all go into like the
Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld, yeah.
I'm like, Jerry Springer did
Jerry
a movie?
Springer, sorry, Jerry Seinfeld. When they all go into like the cereal factory and there's like a cereal dispenser in the middle of the room and a milk dispenser and they're all just like enjoying this cereal, I was like, oh, I got to get back into cereal.
Cherie says camping mini boxes, that was the only time we ever had sugar cereal as kids. She says, what a treat it was.
The other thing is,
getting my camping stuff. May Long is going to be here before we know it.
It's coming
folks.
around the corner. But the other thing is, I never have cereal in the morning. Like, I know it's a breakfast food. That's what it's like. It's marketed as. But I always have cereal. It's usually like a snack before bed, most times.
Cereal to me is a midnight snack.
Me too. Same thing. Quick, easy. I'm tired. Okay, now I can go to bed. You know?
Yeah, I've never quite understood people that and I know you're supposed to, like nutritionists will tell you, dietitians, breakfast is the most important meal. You got to fuel your body. We know that.
I think that's kind of been quelled.
I've been surviving on coffee till 5 p.m. for like 20 years. For sure.
And intermittent fasting, a lot of people don't eat till afternoon anyways now. Yeah. They have coffee and water in the morning and then, I've never been a big, unless it's like a Sunday when you wake up a little late, I've never been a big, let's eat a huge breakfast in the morning kind of guy.
This is beautiful. Kathy says, when I'm missing my grandpa, I eat a bowl of Frosted Flakes with no milk. That was one of his favorite snacks. I love that, Kathy.
How hungry is everyone right now?
I am hungry as hell right now. I'm ready to go.
Pull up a bowl of cereal because we got some clips and things coming up. You can,
this is just kind of the beginning of the show, by the way. Boy, are we having fun these days. I did want to mention all this talk about beef, and I want to thank everybody that threw that into the chat. In case you missed it, on March 14th, not too long ago, we checked in with Dave Salverson and a panel. This was a Real Talk Roundtable in partnership with our friends at the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. And Dave is past president of the Canadian Cattlemen's Association. And Dave and I have been buddies for I don't know, probably 15 or 20 years. And I've always appreciated his perspective on that industry. So if you missed it, and Dave was joined by a panel that had great insights on the economics of farming, on specific tariff and international market implications for canola, which is another huge Canadian crop. And then, of course, Shauna Feth kind of anchored that panel talking about the business of business advocacy in ag. Again, that was our March 14th episode of Real Talk, which you can find on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I also wanted to, as we transition to talking about markets and money, remind you that on April 8th, just a couple of days ago, Marshall McAllister joined us. Marshall is the president of North Road Investment Council. That episode is called, Are We Headed Toward the Great Recession? And he gave us some really good insights on what's happening in markets now, what may happen down the line, and what it means for you depending on where you're at in your life. You can learn more about what Marshall, Kari, and their team do at North Road Investment Council by checking out their website. We're proud to partner with them, a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. NorthroadIC.com is where you can learn more about what they do and how their financial advisors are helping the families and the associations, the organizations that they're working with, navigate these unexpected challenges. They provide expert navigation through the complexities of wealth accumulation and investment advisory services for clients both in and outside of Alberta. Now, what sets them apart? I mean, there's a number of things, I think, including the performance that they've demonstrated over a number of years. But in particular, I want to shine a light on their digital risk advisory services. Nobody else in the space is doing this. They have a team member whose entire job is this, working with the families and organizations that partner with North Road Investment Council to ensure that you're making better and safer choices in your digitally connected life. You can take their digital risk quiz for free today on their website. That's northroadic.com. Also wanted to give a shout out to our friends at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce who have been doing a really great job through this tariff uncertainty to help business owners and operators better understand the landscape and what's going on. Coming up on the 8th of May, if you check out their Instagram at Edmonton Chamber, you can learn more about the state of the city. That's coming up at the Edmonton Convention Center on the 8th of May. I'm always honored to host this event. It's a packed house, typically more than 1,000 people. It's usually the mayor, but right now, as you know, Edmonton's mayor was not the mayor. He's trying to become a member of parliament, right? And there's an interim mayor, but that doesn't feel right for the state of the city. So they've lined up an expert panel. Doug Griffith, CEO at the Chamber, Tracy Bednard from Explore Edmonton, Tim Shipton from OEG, Eddie Robar, Edmonton's city manager, and Build CEO Kaylin Anderson, who's one of the smartest people I've ever talked to. Together, they're going to tackle the big questions facing Alberta's capital city. You can get your tickets today and learn more by visiting the State of the City post on their website. That's edmontonchamber.com. And for those of you that, well, all the money talk really comes back to the fact that you're not working in the job you want to work in right now. As a matter of fact, maybe you're not working at all, but you bring a lot of skills to the table. You know you're a great teammate. Check out kuby.ca today. That's kuby.ca today. In particular, Solar by Kuby. They're hiring right now as they're getting set for a huge spring and summer of solar installations across Western Canada. The careers link at kuby.ca lays out the jobs that they have open right now in Calgary, Edmonton, Kamloops, and Lethbridge, including journey persons, direct solar sales experts, solar PV designers, apprentice electricians, and even an engineer, a lead structural engineer. That job opening in Calgary right now. Competitive salaries, and of course, nobody has more fun than the team at Kuby. You can find them celebrating 10 years this year, by the way, at kuby.ca.
Shout out to our 600 new subscribers so far this week. It's been a great week, and our 2 new members on YouTube. Don't forget, you can become a member now. Go to our YouTube homepage and hit join next to subscribe.
Sure, appreciate that. Yeah, we got our exclusive event coming up for our Patreon supporters particular at an undisclosed secret location on the 17th of April, as we're going to gather and watch the debates and then chat about that. Going to give away some prizes. It's our way of saying thank you to the people that help this show out and sort of show support in a number of different ways, which has been super cool.
And you guys have been banging in the chat as well. Like, it's just, I like step back now because people are going on their own. It's great on our members only chat on Discord. A perk of the second level of membership, Real Deal members.
Yeah, appreciate that, and everybody who's signed up. I see this from Horse Lake Ranch calling out. It says, we'd love to hear 30 minutes from Quick Dick sometime soon. It was actually...
Hey, he was in the chat.
Yeah, it was... oh, wait, he was in the chat?
Yeah, he popped in during the episode.
Shit. Great. Well, that's good to know. I was texting him earlier this morning, just asking him what was going on in his neck of the woods. He says we're on the home stretch of calving, and then he says we'll start getting ready for seeding, but he says there's a lot of snow to come out of this country yet. So that's the report from Saskatchewan, from QDM.
Saskatchewan.
The reports south of the border and, of course, around the world, global implications as markets rallied on news that Trump was essentially lifting basically all the tariffs that they had announced just a couple of days earlier, pressing pause for up to 90 days on many of them, except for China, hitting China hard. And there have been market implications. Some folks have lost a lot of money, and of course, some have made a lot of money. And Fox News host Jessica Tarlov brought her own analysis to the table in assessing the impact of what's happened in the markets and, of course, in individual portfolios since Sunday into Monday.
It's great to be here.
Around the table.
Around the table.
You're saying that now?
Good opening line. Thank you. Trump even admitted that it wasn't the art of the deal or be cool. He said he was watching the bond market. And that's what decided this. He had to cave. I think CNBC's Steve Leisman, he said he didn't just flinch, he ducked. There are trillions still lost. And our very own Charlie Gasparino has been on for the last couple of hours saying that he wished it weren't so, but that the truth is that the White House capitulated. We still have tons of tariffs on, even our closest trading partners. They still don't make any sense. There's a lack of clarity on the specific numbers for Mexico and Canada.
So not the art of the deal, as folks have been saying. They're saying if you didn't pay attention to Donald Trump the way that he was presenting this, you may have forgotten the art of the deal. This is this guy's magic. This is what this guy does. But, well, not everybody's on board. And as you might imagine, Democrats are, in a cynical way, I might say, lighting their hair on fire. But if you're one that saw 5 or 10% of your portfolio disappear, or you ended up on the losing side of this, you'd probably feel like the Democrats are kind of standing up for millions of Americans affected by this. And that includes Congressman Stephen Horsford, who was talking to Trump's tariff czar, can I call him that? Jameson Greer, and had a scathing indictment of what's been going on in Washington.
Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan, how is this not market manipulation?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Well, then what is it? Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system.
You're,
That's offshored all of our factories.
And what has that done? How have you achieved any of that? But to enact enormous harm on the American people, which was our concern from the very beginning. Tariffs are a tool. It can be used in the appropriate way to protect U.S. jobs and small businesses. But that's not what this does. So if it's not market manipulation, what is it? Who's benefiting? What billionaire just got richer? And all the while, there are not even any Republicans left in this hearing. They all left because they don't even want to defend this. But meanwhile, the Speaker is rushing to the floor to pass a budget reconciliation to screw America by passing the biggest tax cut in history on the backs of the American people. WTF? Who's in charge? Because it sure doesn't look like it's the trade representative. You just got the rug pulled out from under you.
So that's Stephen Horsford out of Nevada. When's the last time you heard WTF? You don't.
No,
hear
I think
that
he
a lot,
wanted to
buddy.
swear, but he's trying to maintain.
like bouncing in his seat.
And I agreed too. I didn't want to say this at the start of the show, but like to me, because, and I understand this, there's two schools of thought. Like tariffs only work in the short term. You can go look, research it. They never work in the long term. So I knew Trump was this was just a short term play. 1 month, 2 month, 90 days, whatever. They don't bring jobs. I mean, they bring a few jobs, but they take jobs away from other sectors. So it all evens out. It doesn't increase that. It doesn't help the economy. If it does, it's for a short period of time, very short period of time. It doesn't lower inflation. We're seeing that now. And if it does, it's again for a very short period of time. So what was this? It's either A, what we all think it is, which is Trump. It's just a negotiating tool, a tactic, a bully, a foot on the neck kind of thing. Or, I mean, maybe it is. It's scary to think, but maybe it's market manipulation. Maybe it's insider trading. Maybe it's a bunch of guys who wanted a few days to eat up a bit more of a piece of the pie that they wanted. And I know our guest said it yesterday. If you're a young investor, you may be, you may be profited. But I mean, young investor though, young people don't really have the money to invest. I think rich people got rich and got a bigger piece of the pie in the last 5 to 7 days.
Well, and you've seen, I think everybody's seen, or many people have seen the clips of Trump in the Oval Office talking to people, and he goes, "Hey, this guy just made $900 million." He goes, "That's not bad." I mean, this was the post on Truth Social. This was April 9th, 7:30 Eastern, 7:37 Eastern time. The President of the United States posts, "This is a great time to buy." Signing at DJT, and obviously that proved to be correct.
That's why I told you not insider trading.
Well, it sort of
like this is the president telling you to buy stocks.
I mean, I guess it's not insider trading by definition because he's posting it publicly, but it may be market manipulation, and that's why Senator Adam Schiff basically says that he's kickstarting an investigation into all of this. I mean, the gains have happened. Maybe some of the damage is done, but the senator says that it's time to take a deeper dive into and maybe take this a little bit more seriously than just the news headlines that'll be surfacing for the next 48 hours.
So today, Trump removed many of the tariffs he had imposed in this on again, off again, it must be Wednesday, tariffs are off again kind of policy. This has just wreaked havoc on the markets, of course, but there is another profound danger as well, and that is insider trading within the White House, within the administration. You may have seen early in the day Trump tweet this. Now, this is a good time to buy. So the question is, between that tweet and Donald Trump's announcement that he was reducing the tariffs on most other nations apart from China, the question is, who knew what the president was going to do? And did people around the president trade stock knowing the incredible gyration the market was about to go through? Because look, this is a president who is trading in his own meme coin, even as he's president. His kids are trading in their own cryptocurrency. You've got people like Elon Musk who are doing their own conflicted self-dealing in the administration. in any administration this corrupt, it is more than necessary to ask, were people personally profiting from insider information while people's savings, their retirement accounts, were being torched? So we're writing to the White House to demand answers. Now, I am fully cognizant of the fact that the White House is probably the last place to be forthcoming about this or any other corruption in the administration. We in Congress need to do more than demand answers. We need to do the oversight necessary to get those answers. To date, Republicans have not been willing to do this. Not when it comes to insider trading, potentiality, not when it comes to anything. But we have been very fortunate in the minority that so many whistleblowers have come forward with information about corruption in the administration. Just a few days ago, I held a hearing with people who had to quit the Justice Department, were fired at the Justice Department because they were observing corrupt activity that they would not participate in. We have tremendously benefited from courageous people coming forward. So we invite whistleblowers to step forward. But at the end of the day, we're going to get to the bottom of this, whether people were profiting off the pain of the American people.
That's Senator Adam Schiff right there. Jill says, everybody should have voted for that nice black prosecutor lady. That from Jill in our chat. Ken K says, his cabinet of billionaires and sycophants all made a pile of money. Noob Try Again saying the same thing. Says, of course this is insider trading. Kenzie says, these guys are trying to protect their stocks, not improve the economy. 80s Fanify says, elect a clown, get a circus. A lot of you were talking about midterms and the impact that this may have there. I mean, here's what this means for Canada right now. So the tariffs that are paused for 90 days, this on a whim. I see your comment here, Matthew, in the chat, who says his press secretary, that's Caroline Levitt, said that this was permanent, and then the next day when it's paused, says that the media missed the art of the deal. I don't know if it's the art of the deal, but it basically means that the newly imposed. It's almost like, I find that we're in a position where you can't just laugh about everything, but it's so ridiculous, but it's also real life and it's affecting people, right? So it's like, but you sit here and you just want to, that meme of the guy just banging his head against the wall or banging the head against the door. There is a 10% blanket tariff during this period, this 90 days. So it's good news if you're in Vietnam, or if you're those penguins on whatever island that we're going to face those crippling tariffs. It's now just a 10% blanket tariff, but not just for Canada, right? Now, Chinese tariffs cranked up to 125%, but Canada still, when it comes to steel and aluminum tariffs, when it comes to these fentanyl-related tariffs, remember that 25% fentanyl-related tariffs that are still a factor? So that's still impacting Canada and Mexico. And of course, Mark Carney, in the context of Canada's Prime Minister, though we'll refer to him as Liberal leader for the most part up until the 28th of April. But he described this pause just a short time ago when they were announced on the 9th of April as a welcome reprieve for the global economy. Says that he's planning to negotiate a new economic and security relationship. Remember the phone call that Carney and Trump had, and they sounded all optimistic and said that after the election they're going to get this all figured out in a way that works, or a way that's good for everybody. But still, Canadian markets are not bouncing back as well as everything else. Futures tied to Canada's S&P or TSX index, as we're talking right now today, this is the 10th of April, have declined by more than a percent point from the previous day. And while Canada, I think, ultimately is probably looking. I mean, Shaun Haney, for example, says to us that right now Canada, dodged a bit of a bullet earlier this week, in particular in the context of ag. But I mean, talk to people in the auto sector, talk to people that are impacted by the steel and aluminum tariffs and others. This is far from done. And Canada has not been completely spared, and we're still not talking about free trade in a way that I think most people, including people that are doing the trade, people that are driving these businesses and taking the risks every day, would like to see. So it's a story we'll continue to follow, and you can always send us your thoughts to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Our flamethrower coming up on the 11th of April on the Friday, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, is going to be an absolute banger. We're going to have to start ruthlessly cutting our submissions for the flamethrower this week, or the thing's going to be like 25 minutes. But right now, Ms. B, so far you're looking good. Cam, you're looking good. You're going to be in there. Brandon's got a great one. You're going to be in there, Brandon. You already know know yours is good. Blast Sheep is right there. Nesson is right there. So we got a whole bunch right now. But if you're particularly pissed off about something, if you're all fired up and you'd like to have
you're listening.
Real Talkers hear all about it, you can send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's where you can, of course, let us know exactly what you're thinking on all of this. We got a great email here from Cliff, who watches us from Victoria, BC, and I wanted to get to that in just a minute. He's talking about housing, and he actually thinks that maybe I'm missing the mark on something. These are the emails we most want to read to you, kind of drives our conversation forward. But first, I was intrigued by some of the talk that Pierre Poilievre's been putting out there. We talked to Nick Taylor-Vasey about it on our April 9th episode about crowd sizes. And it's no wonder. I don't blame Pierre Poilievre for drawing however many it was in Nisku. I've heard reports from anywhere from 10 to 15,000. Let's say it was 15,000. If it was, that's a remarkable achievement to get that many people gathered for a political rally in one place. Now, of course, the cynics say, well, yeah, of course you can get 15,000 conservatives in the heart of conservative country in Nisku, Alberta. Do it in Vancouver. Then we'll be impressed. And, of course, everybody's got their opinion on whether or not rallies matter. Well, Poilievre doubled down on this messaging at the risk, I think, of sounding more and more like Donald Trump. But I think he's trying to change the narrative. And maybe it's working. If you think about it, all the national commentary around Pierre Poilievre for the past couple of weeks has been about the ground that he had conceded to the Liberals, right? The polling momentum that he's lost. And so I think that this is a big PR exercise. Start the event an hour late because so many people are trying to get in. Some folks walking 10 or 15 minutes from a parking spot just to get in to that warehouse. Stephen Harper, former prime minister, shows up and endorses the candidate, Poilievre. He didn't do that for Aaron O'Toole. He didn't do that for Andrew Scheer. And so when a journalist asked Pierre Poilievre about this on the 9th of April, he couldn't help but, smirk a little.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I want to ask about...
How'd you like our rally last night?
Well, I wanted to ask about your rallies.
Thank you.
And whether size matters. I actually...
One last question. When was the last time we had a rally that big in Canada?
I don't know. I've never been to a political rally that big, I don't think.
You know a lot about politics.
Well,
you're a very well-informed person. I know that if there were a bigger rally than that, you would know about it.
Okay, so it's Pierre Poilievre talking to Laura Stone. And, what do your thoughts, John?
Look, whatever. I said yesterday, I still think as of right now, if there was an election today, there'd be a conservative minority and Pierre Poilievre would be the Prime Minister of Canada. Would I be happy about it? I don't know, man. I don't want someone who talks like that to people to be representing our country. I just don't. Crowd sizes are awesome, man. Get in front of the crowd, show them behind you, make videos of it, push it on social media. But to just stand there as if I mean, you didn't do anything. People came and showed up because they're going to vote for you. But I mean, Pierre, he's responsible for a lot of this conservative rallying. But if there was another guy, I suspect they would still be mad at Trudeau. They would still be rallying behind that guy. And it's okay to gloat a little. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to be a little, but this clip especially, I'm just like, man, I don't want to hang around this guy. I don't want to be friends with this guy.
But
you know what I mean?
This is what they've been having to work with the entire time. Is like Poilievre has a huge drawing factor, right? It's like there's very few people that can come across as, and I don't mean this as an insult or a compliment. It is what it is, and polling supports it. He is very unlikable.
Mm-hmm. If you don't like him, right?
Well, but even if you like him. Like if you ask people, what do you like about Pierre Poilievre, if they're being honest, and if they're just if it's like conversations like we have in here, most especially when the cameras are turned off and you say, what do you like about him? If people are being honest, they like that he's an asshole. They like that he's a prick to people. They like that he has a sharp tongue. They like that he can put people in their place. They like that he has the slogans. They like that he's an attack dog. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, in a particular context, as a politician, that's a very effective tool. And if he wins this election, it will have worked. But you got to work. You've got to manage a candidate like that when their unlikability is so high, but at the same time their drawing factor is also very high,
100%.
right? So I don't think let's pick another like a conservative, like a candidate that would be like let's say like Aaron O'Toole, for example. Like Aaron O'Toole is he is very likable. He'd be described by people as likable, and I think many conservatives, when they came for his head on a platter after he lost the election, a lot of conservatives felt he was too likable. And but I guarantee you, Aaron O'Toole would not draw 15,000 people to a warehouse. Like he wouldn't. No. And so that's a positive for Pierre Poilievre. This is just like a kind of a guy's impression on this. It's like we've all had that friend. Girls, you probably have your own version of this as well. But a guy that somehow, maybe it's like a girlfriend of his cousins or something like that. And a guy winds up getting a girl to go with him to like the high school grad or as his wedding date. And he's outside of his coverage. Like the guy's done very well, and he brings the bombshell as his date. And then everybody's kind of quietly looking around and respecting it. Like everybody at the reception, there's a murmur, there's a buzz, and everyone's like, did you see? Did you see who Timmy managed to bring to, like, what is the deal with that? How did he pull that off? How did he swing it? And then you know what Timmy does to screw himself in all of this? He starts pointing out himself how hot his date was. Hey, did you see that girl? You see the girl that came? Did you see that? How hot was that girl that I was
like,
with?
where is this going? I get it now.
How hot was the girl?
That's
and then you
what
go,
I'm saying.
no, man.
Own it.
You don't talk about it.
No.
You let other people talk about it.
Let it linger.
You don't talk about it.
No, and I realized in this clip, like he was specifically asked the question. She said, I want to talk to you about crowd sizes. So I realized he didn't step up to the podium and immediately start saying, look at this wonderful crowd like Trump.
Yeah.
But in this election especially, we were talking about this. Yeah, ridings matter and you look at but does it really? You're voting for a face, and the two faces are Carney and Pierre. And people vote with their gut, more so now than I would say in the past, because people's faces are on. So you open your phone, there's Pierre, there's Carney. They're talking to interviewers. They're talking directly to you, looking right in the camera.
Yeah.
And when I hear that clip especially, it just rubs me the wrong way. I'm just like, man, this guy is I don't want to say it. I'd love you on the show. Pierre, please come on the show and talk. But I'm just saying, I get a feeling from that in my gut that makes me not want to vote for him. And I don't think he wants that right now with the way the polls are, with liberals coming up, him kind of coming down. Now I know they're kind of neck and neck, and the conservative numbers are coming back up or whatever. But like with things possibly being so close, why would you risk it by being like, instead of just, like you said, showing up, owning it, have a big smile, say, hey, we had a great rally today.
Anything.
But to go in and almost condescending to the ways you've been to a lot of political rallies, like the way he's talking
just
to this
stroking
reporter,
himself.
It is just
he's stroking himself.
It's like he's in
everybody.
a hot bubble bath or something while he's having this conversation with her. It's like it's so icky.
Yeah. Last night says, when you hate people, you hate seeing their high support. I don't think you hate Pierre Poilievre.
I don't hate Pierre Poilievre.
I just think it's, listen, I just think I'm saying that's why I present a funny comparative. It's why I present the metaphor of Timmy at the high school dance or at the wedding reception with the hot girl that nobody can figure out how he landed, is that the cool part, and coaches will say this to their athletes as well. When you score, act like you've been there before.
Dude,
right?
Why do people love Connor McDavid so much? Because in the post-game interview, he's not doing backflips. He's not talking about himself. He always goes back, hey, my team. You know what I mean? Like that humbleness, it's so much more attractive. It's so much more, magnetic than the guy who boasts and waves the flag.
So Dickie's in the chat and says, doesn't Rogers Place, like the church of hockey where Connor plays? By the way, what a game last night against St. Louis. Says, doesn't Rogers Place only hold like 16 to 18,000? I can tell you they hold 18,400.
God, they can go up to 20 if
18.4 for hockey, but says, you're telling me there was 15,000 in Nisku. I call bullshit. Last night says, well, the 15,000 that were there disagree with you. Listen, I don't know what the total count was.
A big number.
People are saying 12 to 15,000. I will say, and who cares? We're not going to spend time on this show debating whether or not it was 9,000 or 9,500 or 15,000. Listen, they packed the warehouse. Congratulations. They present the number 12 to 15,000. Once We start saying 15, everybody starts saying 15, and then it's 15, whether or not it's actually accurate.
Well,
the point
with
is,
AIs, pretty soon we'll know. They'll be able to read crowds.
Well, and the point is, they packed the warehouse. Good for them, but does it matter? So we asked Nick Taylor-Vasey about this. Every Wednesday, we've got a correspondent through the election campaign from Politico joining us on the show, and every Thursday, including today, you can read my submissions in their Ottawa playbook. It's the View from Alberta. It's been nice for me to get back into print, or at least writing, so to speak. Again, that's Politico.com. Click on Canada and then Ottawa Playbook, and you can read my View from Alberta. So Nick, obviously aware of this huge Poilievre rally. He wasn't there in Nisku, but Nick talked to us a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, after he attended the Poilievre rally in Hamilton, in Steeltown, which is also packed. And then Nick travels to Calgary, to the Red and White Club, where Liberal leader Mark Carney gathers, 900 to 1,000 people, much smaller rally, but in the heart of conservative Calgary, and the Liberals hold their own rally. So we ask Nick the same question Laura Stone asked Pierre Poilievre, which is, does rally size matter? James says the only reason Poilievre is even campaigning in Alberta is because every single riding is no longer a sure thing. What do you think? You'd be hard-pressed to say Pierre Poilievre's feeling insecure if you watched him at that Nisku rally. But it all comes back to the question, do rallies actually matter?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's one of the defining questions of the campaign. Not the ballot question, but the analysis question is, how much do these rallies matter? And there's a fun little side debate. Poilievre doing that in Edmonton, was that playing defense, or was that strutting a little bit because he knows he can get 10,000 plus people to come to a big warehouse near the airport and then have Stephen Harper just supercharge it?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the answer is to that. Well, I mean, we'll find out on election day how many ridings in Edmonton the Conservatives lose. They definitely are fighting in a few of them, like more than even in Calgary. But there's an equally plausible argument that was just a flex. And Poilievre loves these rallies. He keeps mentioning the crowd size to reporters. He's done that multiple times now. I think he's really proud of the fact that he can pack that place. So yeah, I mean, they're huge. And Carney's was not that big. It was, I think the capacity of it was in the Red and White Club by the stadium in Calgary.
Yeah.
900 people or so. But it was energy, I think, relatively speaking, for Liberals in Calgary. I think they were pumped that in the third week of a federal campaign, they had a Liberal leader in town. They're feeling pretty good about a few ridings there. You wrote about a couple of them for us in our newsletter last week, and so it was 900 people. And Mark Carney doesn't have quite the showmanship of Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, I would say not even close.
Yeah, I'm understanding it slightly, but they were happy to have him there for sure, and he did. I think he did his job.
So that's Nick Taylor-Vasey on Real Talk April 9th if you want to check that episode out. And again, you can check out Politico.com for all of their reporting through the election campaign. If you click on Canada and then Ottawa Playbook, this is updated every single day, which is a really great resource for anybody that's really trying to stay on top of what's happening on the campaign trail and exactly who's gaining ground, maybe who's losing ground. Nick himself, their Ottawa bureau chief, is in Alberta right now. Obviously, was in our studio yesterday. And so he's been following around George Chahal in Calgary. He spent some time with Amarjeet Sohi, mayor on leave in Edmonton, and he writes about that. And then if you keep going down, you'll find my View from Alberta. Again, that's at Politico.com. Check out their Ottawa Playbook. Cliff sent us a note, and we appreciate everybody that watches Real Talk, that downloads or listens to the podcast from across the country and around the world. 37 different countries last month, by the way. Cliff says, greetings, Real Talkers from Victoria, BC. He says, I listen to your show, have done so for the past few years. I love what you guys do. I wish we had something in BC that could capture that same energy. Cliff, they've always been envious of Alberta energy in BC. We appreciate your subscribing. He says, living in Victoria, I've become very involved in housing advocacy, and I'm basically a single issue voter on that particular one. And I have to say, I think, Ryan, that your characterization of the Liberal housing plan only captures half their platform. He says the Liberals have outlined many policies to reduce red tape and to cut building costs for private developers. He says reducing development charges, creating tax incentives for rentals, and doubling down on the accelerator fund are all examples. The Liberals are attacking the issue from both sides. He says, regardless, I love the show. That from Cliff in Victoria. Appreciate that. Fair enough point. I sort of, and I think yesterday when I qualified it, I did acknowledge that I was really doing it in sort of sparing fashion, like one sentence to characterize each of the plans. I basically said the Liberals want to build a national organization, a national housing authority that'll get the building done across the country where it's most needed, while the Conservatives want to reduce cost barriers and other barriers, regulatory barriers, maybe red tape, so to speak, for builders and developers and for would-be home buyers to make it a little easier. And I appreciate Cliff saying, yeah, maybe there's more to it than your one sentence here, one sentence there, which is often the case in politics.
Yeah, maybe it's get those regulations out of the way. Get those. Why do we need to check all the measurements and make sure the angles are right? Let's just build crooked homes, get them out as fast as we. No, I'm just kidding.
But interesting point.
Joke.
But Shaun Haney kind of said the same thing today, right?
But you can't go too fast. We need homes fast, but we still have to do them right?
Yeah, I mean, Haney with an interesting take on that earlier in an ag context, or I mean, I guess you could apply it to pipelines and the national energy corridor and everything else, but saying that, Canadians, all we do is talk about things, we don't really do anything. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could have sat there and argued. I mean, the TMX expansion happened. Now they're talking about maybe even more than that, but maybe he's right. And then you got to strike the balance, right? We talk about this all the time. How many times on Real Talk, if we had a drinking game, we'd be full-blown wasted some weeks if you talked about the intersection of the economy and the environment. But that is relevant.
Yeah,
right?
You have to take your time with planning things. But again, this is where I think supercomputers and AI are going to come into factor in the next 5 years. Is we won't have to do all that. When you're sitting there and you're trying to develop things and plans and policy, the world moving so much faster behind you. So I get what he was saying there. Yeah. But at the same time, I think AI, supercomputers, all that stuff in the next 5 years is going to help us do all that planning, all that thought work that we sit down and do in meetings for weeks and weeks and weeks faster. I love that clip from Nick from Politico, and I think it's great. And I want to just come back in and say, because I was kind of piling on Poilievre there, but Carney did it too. In an interview, Carney made me cringe as well when he talked back to that reporter.
Oh yeah.
So it's the same thing.
You mean the one that we spent a bunch of time talking about?
Of course. Okay. Yeah. The one that we spent 3 days talking about that everyone's like,
good,
why
just making sure.
Yeah. But I get the same feeling from him. That day I was my gut is telling me I don't want to give someone who talks to someone like that a vote. So it comes from both sides of the aisle. It's not just me looking at Pierre every day, waiting for him to say something that pisses me off. It's a feeling I get in my gut. And so there's room for dropping bombs. There's room for getting your punches in. I agree with that. But to me, I don't like it when you do it to the press, because they're just there to they're not there always. Some of them are there to get a soundbite. I understand that social media is the engine of the world and the likes and people's salaries these days. But at the same time, they're just there doing their job. So when Carney does it and when Pierre does it, I don't like it either way.
Podcaster Tommy Temper in the chat, he says, my vote is to make the small working stiff have a better life. Says Pierre Poilievre for the win. Tommy, that's what millions of people will be voting for, and ultimately what they'll be deciding based on their
I want that too.
Based on their analysis or their understanding of the election platforms. Tommy also went on to say, by the way, just wait for the debate. I can't wait for the debate.
I can't wait.
I almost wish, and I don't really wish this, and don't send us your angry emails. I with respect to NDP supporters,
Fridays tomorrow.
I would rather just get all the with respect to Jagmeet Singh and New Democrats across Canada. I don't really mean this, but wouldn't it be better if you could just have the two square off,
like in the States?
Carney Poilievre,
back and forth.
Let the two.
There's gonna be times during this debate, and we're gonna be there where we're just, okay.
Don't say where.
I'm going to the bathroom because this is just, I don't need to hear from this, and I don't want to say, but come on, look at the numbers. I agree with you. I think it should be the two heads. Like I said, we're voting for this face or this face, and it's Carney or Pierre. They should, yes, let's have the debate. Let's hear from all parties, because it is Canada. We do want to hear what the Bloc has to say. We want to hear what the Green Party has to say. I do. I'll tell you, years ago, I honestly, all I did was vote Green because I wanted more of those people's voices in our government. But nowadays, with the election the way it is right now, I'm the same with you. I think we should have a separate just PP versus Carn boy.
Yeah. And again, what I'm saying is undemocratic.
It is. That's why I threw that in. It's we need to hear the other parties.
Right? We do. Of course we do. But, I mean, the Greens will not be in the debate. But you look at this and I don't actually mean what I'm saying, but I just would love to see those two square off.
100%.
I feel like when the Bloc has their time, when the NDP has their time, and they're going to be talking, it's just everybody's going to be, can we please get back to these two? Can we please get back here?
But what those parties may do, which is why they're there, is they may throw something at one of those guys that they weren't expecting. Because, Pierre's, he's doing all his homework on what Carney's going to say and vice versa.
Yeah.
Maybe the Bloc will throw in something and say, well, Mr. Poilievre or Mr. Carney says this, and that's why we need him there, right?
Heavy D in our chat is 100% correct and says, I appreciate having more than two parties or more than two voices in government. And you know what?
I like that about Canada.
What does Canada Pizzeria mean by this? Says having the Greens at the debate is like me showing up to Oilers training camp. Cam, you're so hard on yourself.
That's not that.
Cam, are you letting the dream die? Are you giving up? Are you telling me that you're shot with the Oilers? That the window is closed? Are you for real? And a big shout out to Horse Lake Ranch, who's just this is
$50 super chat.
$50 into the super chat says, I'm supporting your ag shows. This has been another good one. Thank you, Horse Lake Ranch. We appreciate that. That's a lot of beers for the Real Talk Beer Fridge, and we promise you, not just because it's an area of interest for us, but because it matters to us and to this audience. Of course, we'll continue to cover ag and other industries in as fulsome fashion with the expert voices as best we can.
We cover ag more than, think of all the political talk shows, in Alberta, in Canada. I think we cover ag the most out of all of them because I check them out. So yeah, Horse Lake Ranch, become a member, buddy, instead of just throwing us
Johnny, don't circle back already. There's a lot of ways for you to support the show, and this at your request, Real Talkers, and we appreciate it. I wanted to get to an email from an audience member here with lived experience as a first responder based on a pretty personal show we did yesterday. My wife joined us in studio along with the District Fire Chief Brian Williams after a pretty scary moment on the North Saskatchewan River for our family. That in a quick second, but first, briefly, I want to shine a spotlight on UCAN Youth Services right now. We're so proud to partner with this nonprofit organization based out of Edmonton because we believe in what they do, and we have seen time after time successful outcomes. The work that they're doing with young people in the Metro Edmonton and Capital Region. You can read more about UCAN Youth Services online at ucan.ca. They've got kind of two main things going on. They have their Relentless Outreach program where they work with young people 12 to 17 that, quite frankly, are well, I'm just going to say they're on a destructive path. That's a fact. Many of them incarcerated already or arrested again and again and again. I mean, some of them are 12 years old here. Many of them are experiencing homelessness. They're experiencing hunger, and UCAN steps up in a big way. And then they've got their kind of the Road to Work programs, the Verto programs. This is for the young adults aged 18 to 24. And these are young people that they basically just need an opportunity. They've got a ton of potential. They're willing to work. They're offering a whole lot to the employers that are partnering with UCAN. They just needed some counsel. They just needed some guidance. And that comes in two different ways, the Verto project and the Road to Work project. There's a ton of opportunities for you to get involved. Maybe you know a young person that we just described them, right? Maybe they're not in the right friend circle, or maybe life's just sort of handed them maybe a rough bit of cards, and you know that with the right track in front of them, they could succeed, or maybe there's a young person that could use a referral to a Relentless Outreach worker. Either way, you can tap into these programs or consider making a donation at ucan.ca. And speaking of proud partnerships, there's Complete Care Restoration. This is not just the team that built our studio here in the historic Mercer warehouse, overcoming a number of obstacles, including fixing water leaks, solving some really, really pesky electrical issues, but also treating the space like it was their own. We saw them do that again and again and again. It gave us peace of mind for this big investment of ours. If your big investment, your home or your business, experiences an interruption, a fire, flood, smoke damage, sewer backup, whatever it is, don't let it sit there and get worse. Get in touch with them today at CompleteCareRestoration.ca. Les says, I'm so tired of hearing about Trump and tariffs and Poilievre and Danielle Smith and Kevin O'Leary, and I just wish this election was over so Canada could get to work. That from Les. There are people that are out there working every single day, and that includes first responders. If you missed our episode on the 9th of April, I encourage you to check it out. It starts off differently than other ones. We usually hit the rubber, the tires are smoking right out of the gates, talking news and politics. But this time, we welcomed my wife, Kari. Our dog, Monroe, a black lab, 6 years old, just had her birthday, was with us in studio as well, and an incredible representative of Edmonton Fire Rescue Services, Deputy Deputy Chief Brian Williams, who, along with a number of firefighters, responded to a crisis that our family was experiencing on the North Saskatchewan River.
She went right out onto the ice and jumped into the water after the ducks. I'm calling her, and she turns around, realizes that she's not going to be able to get back up onto the ice because through the center of the river, it's flowing, but still along the shoreline, there's still huge ice patches. I immediately called 911. At no point was I going to go in the river. I knew right away, and I know that's your first instinct as a dog owner. You're like, I just want to go save my baby. You can't do that.
Well, we have the ability to get on the water and navigate ice flows at certain points, but when it gets too dangerous, we can't even go in there. This is one of the most dangerous things that we do. That includes firefighting. The rivers are very unpredictable. It's very fast. It's very powerful for anybody that's ever been in there. We do extensive training summer and winter. It's terrifying for our crews. It's something to be really respected at all times.
I was just so thankful that they didn't end up having to go in. She managed to prop herself up onto the one ice chunk. My next thought is, don't fall through. She was just in complete distress. And then that's when we connected with the rest of the crew and everything was okay.
Wonderful outcome. And we're so grateful as a family, obviously. You see Lorne Corbett in our chat almost every single day, a retired district chief and so well respected with Edmonton Fire Rescue personnel, both retired and active duty. He wrote in just to say that April 19th episode was fantastic. Lorne says, as you know, I'm a fire guy and I thoroughly enjoyed the segment. Chief Williams is a consummate professional, and it showed by his comments on the record. And Kari's story and actions were admirable, and I especially respect her side and the story of the events. Lorne says this is real life, and very few people can relate to an event like this unless they're put in that situation. He says, I would love to see Real Talk do a segment on the branches of unsung heroes like dispatchers, fire prevention, mechanics, fire inspectors, fire investigators, and others. Lorne says this is a real team effort, and he says, and I feel that fire suppression gets the limelight. Fire suppression, of course, these are the men and women on the front line, putting water, putting foam on the fires, right? He says it would be difficult to include all of these branches, maybe in a show, but if I had to pick one to feature on Real Talk, it would be dispatchers. He says on the fire ground, the dispatchers are the unsung heroes. Only the fire commanders would truly understand this critical function of an emergency scene. He says, once again, my respect to Kari, to the dispatchers, to the fire crews on an event that could have had a much different outcome than what was ultimately successful on the North Saskatchewan that day. Lorne says, I love your show. Lorne, we love you and appreciate you. I wanted to, and I tried to show some love on that April 9th episode to dispatchers. But I will say, and at Lorne's behest here as well, to circle back on it, it blows my mind that there are people that are sitting basically in an office, like in dispatch, like whatever they call it, like message control or whatever they call it. But these people are sitting there, and at any moment, and you know how this is, they describe firefighters, and listen, we're talking about paramedics and police officers and military members as well, right? But right now we're talking firefighters. They call them coiled springs because you may go past a fire hall and you see them out there like maybe they're like shooting basketball or maybe they're washing the trucks or drying out the hoses or whatever it is, mowing the lawn, and you go, yeah, that must be nice, kind of hang out with the boys all day, right? They're coiled springs. At a moment's notice, they're gone, going into a scenario that none of us would have the stones, let alone the training, to go into. But these dispatchers, they're the ones that are sitting in this room, and when that phone rings, every single time, or for the most part, almost every single time somebody dials 911, they're having what is probably or maybe the worst day of their life. And these dispatchers go from like 0 to 100, right? Trying to understand the person's name, trying to bring some calm to this individual that's talking on the phone, trying to get the basic details, right? As they're talking to you, what's your name? Tell me where you're calling from. So right away, as they're getting the story, they're already sending, the fire trucks know, right? They're on there, or the police officers are already responding because of this active situation. And then the dispatchers have to get the details. They need to know if an event needs to be staged, for example, right? Or you don't send the firefighters into a situation where they could get shot. Maybe there's a hostage situation. Maybe the cops need to go in first. All of the details that if they're missed could have tragic outcomes. And then dispatchers need to be able to figure things out, like with Kari on the riverbank. She wasn't at an intersection. It wasn't easy to say exactly where she was, but the dispatchers were able to work with her to get that exact location so the firefighters could be there as soon as possible. I think there's a million things that they do, and you could say this about a number of different occupations, professions, people that we're lucky to have showing up to work every single day, but things that dispatchers do that we wouldn't even think about. And then at the end of the call, John, they hang up, and then they get ready to do it again. And I would imagine that dispatchers, just like the frontline personnel that are doing these things, probably carry a lot with them emotionally. You think of what it's like, those of us that have maybe once or twice or 3 times in our lives have had a legitimately distressing phone call or like a distressing interaction. And you carry that with you. You walk with you.
Oh, yeah.
And I just really appreciated what Chief Lorne had to say about that, and really appreciate everybody that goes to work for us across the country to work in these types of, we call these jobs, these are callings. These are special callings that people undertake. And we just wanted to use this platform to give a huge shout out to everybody.
I'm glad. And I'll pat him on the back too. Please, we need more people like that, because I can't imagine going to work every day and just hearing, I mean, a 911 dispatcher has got to be, like, I don't think anyone grows up wanting to be them, but thank God we have people who actually go into that field. I don't know what the route is, whether you go into, maybe you were going into law enforcement, but you didn't want to be in the field, or maybe you were going to be an EMS tech, or maybe you wanted to drive an ambulance or do something like that, and maybe there's just mobility issues, so this is your way to help. Whatever led you there, thank you. And hopefully people who are there now who have learned how to deal with it, even though obviously, like you said, they take a backpack full of that stuff home with them every night. They're probably doing therapy once or twice a week. That's what it is. But thank you to those people, and whoever you are, draw more people into that area, because we need more people who do that. Yeah, no kidding. Miss Katie says, imagine how many stupid calls dispatchers have to deal with as well. That's what I was just thinking as well. The crank calls that are like, man, we're trying to save people's lives here. There was the one about the lady that called in the U.S. This one went viral when she called. Oh, just the ones that are annoying that don't have to do with. She only got 9 McNuggets in her pack of 10, and she called 911. I love this from Mariah, who's watching us from GP. What's up, Mariah? She says, as somebody who takes their dog to the river fishing and even crossing rivers in the summertime, it was a really good reminder that things can happen even if my girl is super well trained. And Mariah, that's the thing. We understand, like, and we knew, Kari and I, when we made the decision, and it was an easy decision to share the story and to share the experience, but we knew we were going to take some shots, and that's fair. It's fair game. Some of you believe that the fire department shouldn't respond to calls involving animals. I think probably the fire department knows that a lot of pet owners will go in after the pet if they don't know that the fire department's on the way. I think that's the main thinking. Yeah. Some of you believe that our family should pick up the tab for the response to that, and maybe there's an argument to be made for that. I think that the fire department and Chief Williams is very clear that the last thing they want is in an emergency situation for people to hesitate. It's the same thing that you'll hear from doctors, right? Like Darren Markland or Shazma Mathani or the other doctors that we have on the show, and they'll say, like, there's people that worry, and maybe there's a fine line here, but there's people that worry that, like, oh, what I'm experiencing right now, my arm's going numb, or it feels like I have really bad indigestion. In other words, signs of a heart attack, different signs in men and women as well. But they'll say, oh, I don't want to, like, embarrass, I don't want to call an ambulance, or I don't want to show up at the ER, the wait times, I better not do. What are they going to tell you to do? Call every time. If you think there's an emergency, don't be self-conscious. Don't worry about burdening the system. If you have the sniffles, worry about burdening the system. Don't go to the ER. But if you have what you know in your mind, you know in your heart, are signs of a medical emergency, don't hesitate. Call 911. And the other thing, of course, is a lot of people, we got some messages from folks, and this is fine. Like I said, we expected this from people that say, stupid dog owners like you, some even using stronger language, that have dogs that have no business being off leash, or have dogs with piss poor recall, as one of you said in an email to us yesterday. Again, just to reiterate, not being defensive, but the fact of the matter is, and not everybody says this about their own dogs. I mean, Moses, our beautiful boxer, rest in peace, was not very well behaved. And I admit that, and I acknowledge that, and Moses was never off leash. But Monroe is one of the best behaved, most well-trained dogs you'd ever meet. Mm-hmm. And this was such an unusual circumstance. You never think, like Mariah just alluded to, Mariah's probably crossed rivers or been around rivers fishing with her dog time and time again. Same with us in Monroe. Monroe never does this. I would, with confidence, walk Monroe. I wouldn't do it, but you could walk Monroe downtown in a major city off leash, and she would stay by your side, heel, as they say, no problem. But something happened on the river this week. Those ducks. She decided she was going to go after the ducks. Yeah. It's hardwired for labs to go get, usually the bird's dead when they go get it, but she wanted to go get those ducks. Yeah. But it was such a valuable reminder for
all of us, and that's why we did the segment.
And I'm sure you guys learned a lesson. 80s family, I love
Absolutely.
This is a cute comment in the chat. Did Mo get a ducky toy after this? You should get her a little duck toy just to keep her at bay at home. But I hate when people say, people like you shouldn't own dogs. I equate it to the same when people say, some people shouldn't have kids. Well, that's true, but like everyone's allowed to have children. Everyone's allowed to have pets, and it's a learning experience, especially when if you've never had an animal before, you learn right quick on what, like the rules and how to properly keep your dog safe. And man, I would do the same thing, Ryan. If my dog was bitten by another animal, was in an emergency situation, am I going to pick them up, drive them to a vet, hope the vet's open? If not, take them to an emergency vet. I would call 911 right away as well. I think that's what 911 is for. It's for emergency situations. And yes, of course, it's there to prevent people from dying of heart attacks and who get into emergency situations at work. But it's also like if you don't know what to do. And I'm sure, like you just said, those dispatchers, they get calls about pets all the time. And if they think it's not a dire situation, they're going to give you the information or point you in the right direction. So call them regardless.
Absolutely. Kathy says, I have friends or family that have been or currently are 911 dispatchers. Says, I can't even imagine the situations they've had to listen to. No kidding, right? You hear something in the background. Let's not even go there right now, but some of the stuff they must hear. Cherie says, I live right on a big river, and thanks to Kari, as I wouldn't have had thought to call 911 for my dog, even though she's our family as well, of course. Blah Sheep says, like Chief said yesterday, life ain't perfect, and first responders wouldn't be necessary if life was perfect. How about this from Ben? Says, when our youngest was 11 months old, she had difficulty breathing, so we took her into emergency. I didn't think it was serious, but all of a sudden, a code blew, alarms going off, people running. Here's an 11-month-old fighting off like 5 or 6 adults. Says it was a very shocking time. Thank God you took her in, hey? Jules says, dogs are still going to be dogs in the end. Amen, Jules. Says, I have a friend that does bird training with his dog. Says they're not supposed to actually chomp the bird, but it still happens. You're right. They're animals, right? You can let us know what you think or how this resonated with you. Talk to RyanJesperson.com. We always appreciate your personal stories. LT wondering, have we discussed raises for nurses? Yes, we have a couple of days ago. Says, I'd love to see some guests come on to discuss that. Absolutely. So we got shows kind of in the works. Obviously, it's a little bit different these days, Real Talkers, as you know, because we are in the midst of this federal election campaign. So we're really intentionally going pedal to the metal on federal election coverage right up until the 28th of April. Our episode on the 29th, the day after the election, is going to be a lot of fun. Our group chat roundtable will be back in the mix, breaking down what exactly happened. We'll talk to Vicky Machama, the host of Party All the Time, that morning as well. And then we'll settle back into kind of what more of you are used to, which is the episodes about things that have absolutely nothing to do with a federal election or even politics for that matter, because we know the way that most people are wired, your interest levels, you can chew gum and walk at the same time. And so we've got a wonderful spring into summer planned here on the show, and we're grateful to have you along with us. As we wrap today, I wanted to make a quick announcement. You may have heard it on the show yesterday, but our friends at the Ranch Golf and Country Club, Johnny, we can say goodbye with this because this is a great bit of news. Wanted us to let you know that they are officially open for business. That's right. Golf is business. It really is. On the 15th of April, that's coming up just this next week, Tuesday, the ranch wide open, and we have our registration wide open. Go to RyanJesperson.com. The events link, the Real Talk Golf Classic at the ranch, the 19th of June. That's a Thursday. Register your foursome or ask about sponsorship today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Kari Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.